How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. Excited to be back for this week before we're out basically again for almost the rest of the month. We'll be doing a lot of recorded streams while I'm at NAB. I've got a training thing I got to do, and then I've got another trip coming up for some business. So excited to at least be getting one live stream here this month. But yeah, so today we're gonna basically wrap up a lot of the questions that we didn't really get a ton of time to get through over the last number of streams that we've had about the S1R Mark II. So I've been going through Discord, or the LUMIX Creators Discord. I've been going through Reddit and a lot of the comments on the videos that have been posted and kind of just collecting a number of the kind of more common questions that have been asked for us to kind of clarify. So I can go through them today. I've got my S1R Mark II hooked up here so we can actually follow along and go through everything we need. And aside from those questions that I've got, if you have questions about the camera, make sure to tag at LUMIX USA, as you can see a couple people are doing. It just helps me see the questions so we can kind of get through some of them. Yeah, we'll kind of just take it from there and just kind of run through and get you some answers to some questions that you may have. Before we get into that, I want to remind those of you in the US about LUMIX Pro services. You have the red tier and the platinum tier. Red tier is free, so if you're in the US and you've purchased the LUMIX camera, follow the QR code down below. Get yourself registered. It's a great program so that you've got some good support on the back end. You get a 3-year extended warranty for all you have to do is just register under the program. But if you're somebody who likes a higher level of service and support, you can take a look at the Platinum tier. Platinum tier offers you that 3-year extended warranty, but on top of it, you get 2-day repairs, next day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs, sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates, all the stuff that you would want to use and kind of keep in your back pocket for getting in and out of various photo and video seasons. And you also get access to a membership hotline where you can call in to get service and support on your equipment for, maybe a little less challenging issues that some may have. So I encourage you, if you're in the US, take a look at the link down in the description or follow the QR code that's on the screen here, and you can get yourself registered for that. There are LUMIX Pro service programs available in various other regions. We do have the global portal on the bottom, so at that point you do have access to go take a look and see if your country is participating within the program. Yeah, I do know that we have a number of our Canadian guests here, and unfortunately it's not my call as to whether or not Canada is part of the North American LUMIX Pro services. But I do know that, at least as far as I remember, the equipment that comes in, as long as you send it to Panasonic for service and support, I believe goes to the same location that the U.S. Service and support goes to, which is down in Florida. So I highly recommend, if you do have any issues, to go through the formal support with Panasonic. To be clear, for many people out there, there are not, to my knowledge, there are not third-party authorized repair centers for the cameras, so just kind of keep that in mind. But yeah, let's take a look at some of the questions that came through already. So Roving says, will there ever be an adapter to use L-mount lenses on Micro Four Thirds? Also, can we get parfocal power zoom lenses for the MFT system? So parfocal MFT power zoom lenses, honestly, no idea. We don't really have any information or honestly cover anything about future product development or plans or ideas that we may have. So even if I did know something, I wouldn't be able to talk about it. But yeah, we do have the 2 power zooms out there, and Micro Four Thirds is a pretty, kind of, I'd say, compatible system across the board for a lot of other lenses as well. So I honestly don't know. The first part of your question, will there ever be an L-mount adapter for Micro Four Thirds? I think I'm pretty safe to say from our side that no, there will not be. You run into a number of problems to do that. While yes, if you look at full frame being able to cover the sensor area of a micro four thirds sensor or a four thirds sensor, sure, from that perspective, I can see it. And I can understand the viewpoint of people that are, kind of wanting micro four thirds to L mount adapters. However, you have a major technical barrier there, is that the two mounts, micro four thirds and the L mount, are within 0.75 millimeters of each other. So physically building an adapter, to my knowledge, for all the people that I've spoken to about it, physically building an adapter that allows you to pass communication, and allows you to have a strong enough connection to the bayonet mount is not possible. So I understand people want it, but it's just not physically possible. The math doesn't add up. The math doesn't math to be able to, make those connections work. Yeah, that's kind of where that is now. Moon says, why did the release get pushed back, and will it actually be released on the 31st? Well, so as you've probably seen, the demand and early orders for the S1R Mark II definitely exceeded what we had intended to bring in on first orders. So a lot of times what ends up happening in a case like that is you kind of have a choice. You either release, the few orders that you can in that first shipment, and then you have to account for, are there any kind of shipping delays or importing delays, things like that throughout various different regions, and products being able to get out of the factories into the, kind of transit pipeline. So my understanding in talking to the various teams is that we have been shipping cameras. I know I've seen online there are some people, especially over in Europe, that have been receiving their cameras and posting out there on it. So shipping is underway with the camera. It's going to be up to the retailer that you purchased from for however long it takes them to get the inventory into their system, go through their pre-orders, and then actually execute those orders and start shipping them. So what I would say is, if you have any questions about where your order is, or, potentially how long it's going to take, check with your retailer that you purchased through. Other kind of things is like, check your card, check your bank statements, cards, things like that. See if the retailer has charged your card. In many cases, that's a good indication of like, hey, it's been processed and it's shipping out. But yeah, I can wholeheartedly tell you that the demand on the camera has been much higher than initially expected. So there's a backlog to get these things out. And in a lot of cases, we'll work to bolster that initial order so that you're not waiting for back orders as long as you would potentially think you'd have to wait, to try to clear through as many as possible within the first rounds of shipments that come in. But yeah, that's kind of where it is there. McCary, please add LUMIX Pro service to Ontario, Canada. The service here is terrible. One of my G92s is crashing, locking up, and becoming inoperable every few uses while corrupting cards. Yeah, I mean, McCary, the big thing there I'd say would be, so are you working in with our service support team, or are you going through a dealer? Sometimes the dealers can not make the process overcomplicated, but sometimes there's a barrier there between the problem you're having and then what gets communicated. If it is going directly to our service and support center, definitely let me know. We can kind of find out and check in with them and kind of see what's going on with it. But yeah, we can kind of follow up there. As far as LUMIX Pro services go for Canada, unfortunately, it's not my call. In some cases, I wish it was my call, because I'd be happy to step up for that. But fortunately, it's not something I have any kind of say over in that side. Tristan says, love that we finally have Capture One support for tethering in the S1R2. Are there plans to add support to the S5 II cameras? Future support and planning there. It's not really something that I have a lot of clear visibility into, because with Capture One, it's kind of a little more up to Capture One as far as what they want to enable within their software. I'd say honestly, the S1R Mark II getting support is a really, really solid first step into Capture One as far as like the tethering goes. To be clear, Capture One supports the raw files from our cameras, so if you're looking at it just as a raw editor, you don't need anything else. Like the support's there, you're good to go. But if tether is something that you're, very specifically needed, I would say the S1R2 is the great first step with it. Yeah. There are subtle engine differences between the S1R2 and the S5 II series cameras. So in some cases, it's not as simple as just, kind of flipping a switch and saying like, yes, this is good to go, or, whatever. A lot of testing goes into making sure that when you're working in with those programs that it's actually doing everything it's supposed to. And we can probably do another stream about that, kind of later on as far as like all of the control that you have in with Capture One, because we lightly talked about it on the last live stream. But yeah, that's kind of where Capture One is. Where do we go here? Danny, not sure if this is possible, but it would be really cool if Lumix could make it so that in crop zoom mode, the focus ring becomes a zoom ring. That would definitely be an interesting idea. I know that got recommended, I think even back when the S9 was launched, about, since lenses are focused by wire, so that means that the focus ring is technically a controllable ring. At that point, it really comes down to more, how much coding and write of the software has to be done to make it work. So we've passed it on. I know the engineering team has seen that comment and received that comment from a number of people. I don't know if it's something that's high up on the list of things that they would be working on right away. But I can reiterate it, and you commenting it here definitely helps that as well. Let's see here. Let's see here. Why does Lumix keep bringing out cameras that I want now? Emphasis on now. I have the S5 II, which I love, but now I want the S1R2. As an aside, when will the Flow app be available more widely? Well, we always come out with new cameras. So, yeah. As far as the Flow app goes, so the Flow app is planned for S5 II, S5 IIX, and GH7. I still don't have a date yet as to when it's going to be updated for those cameras. Know that with Flow, it would involve a camera update as well as an app update. So kind of like I was saying before with like kind of the Capture One thing, a lot of times you'll see a camera launch and it'll have, some of the latest, capabilities that we've got within the products. And then in order to bring those things to other cameras, there's a lot of time spent making sure like, hey, if we add these to this camera that has its own existing, history of firmware updates, one, does it break anything? Does it cause any slowdowns or issues or, problems in general? So there's a lot of validation that goes into play to make sure like, hey, if we bring this back and we're going to have support on it, does it pass all of our tests to make sure that when it's deployed, it doesn't do things like, I don't know, break your Bluetooth or break your Wi-Fi, like all those kinds of things. So I wish I had a better date or time frame to give you for it. But it is scheduled to come to the S5 II series cameras. So obviously keep in touch here, subscribe to our emails, follow us over on Discord, all the various different platforms, because we'll be very sure to be talking about it when it does come, finally. Let's see here. Question. How would you compare the new autofocus to Sony, Canon, or Nikon? I have one on order from B&H, but going on Safari in September. Thanks. So, I'm probably not the best person to ask that question for a couple of reasons. One, anything I say is going to be taken as, a line from the company, because I represent Lumix. I represent Panasonic Lumix globally in many aspects. So there's what I can tell you, and that is, yes, it's 100% competitive across the board. I think there are a number of areas that we do, better than Canon, Nikon, and Sony in focus, and it's a massive leap up from the previous cameras. So, yeah, you can kind of take that as you want. In my own personal experience shooting with the cameras, and I'm probably one of the few people in the world that has probably the most hands-on time with these cameras, specifically this camera, I can tell you in the times that I've shot and kind of, non-scientifically compared it to my friends' cameras, like with a Z8 and with some of the Canon stuff and some Sony stuff, honestly, I find it hard to tell a difference between the two. Now, to put that in context, that's doing some light, motorsports photography, because I photograph motorcycles. I haven't done it a lot recently, but I'll go up and I'll photograph motorcycles on the street that are, kind of going through corners pretty quick and, coming towards, across, and away from camera. And it always holds up really well. When I photograph my dog that's going to be, kind of running around, playing around in the park, I'm perfectly satisfied with it. My level of satisfaction may not be the same level as yours, so that's why I find that a hard kind of question to say. What I would tell you is, from a lot of the people that have had hands-on with the cameras, they have some positives to say about it, they have some negatives to say about it, but if you put that in context of all of the brands out there, kind of all seems to be the same as to what everyone says about everybody's brand. There are areas where they excel, there are areas where maybe they're a little behind. I'd say the biggest thing with our camera, and actually I can do this and show you, the biggest thing with our camera is that we have in our modes, and this is going to depend on whether or not you're photo or video capture, although I just realized I did not have my main camera set up here, so give me 2 seconds and let me fix that. Boop. Hi, it's me again. There we go. Okay, so one of the things I'd say, just to kind of keep in mind with the Lumix cameras, is so out of the box defaults on our cameras are designed to be very neutral as far as speed and sensitivity goes. You'll find that there are certain situations where if I'm going to be doing really fast-paced work, say in the video side, I'm probably going to tune up my AF speed and sensitivity because I want it to be more responsive. Our default out of the box, I'd say maybe a bit conservative. So it's prioritizing more a smooth focus instead of maybe an ultra responsive, snap from point to point. In some cases, that's what people really like. In other cases, you want it to perform faster, but understanding that you have the control to change that in this camera is probably a major thing. When I'm in photography with the camera, you'll notice that the AF custom settings in photography are a little bit more detailed as far as what you can change. So there are things like different custom set modes in the camera, and you can see by default our sensitivity and switching speeds are neutral, so they're set at 0, and then moving subject prediction is set to a +1. So again, that's kind of like middle of the road. Usually with our cameras, when I first take them out of the box, if I'm gonna go, just one, because I've worked with our cameras for long enough, it's going on a decade now, I will typically go into the camera and default my stuff to set 3 for general everyday just working with the camera. The reason for this is that when I'm photographing with the camera, I tend to be moving around a bit. So if I'm using full area, this is where like AF sensitivity and switching sensitivity kind of comes into play. So I want the system to be a bit more responsive for the way that I want to photograph. If I'm doing the motorcycles or cars or things like that, I'm going to go into set 4, where, again, it uses these as base defaults. But I highly recommend anybody, and if you're on any of the PDAF cameras, even the non-PDAF cameras have these settings as well that you can use to tune your focusing system. I highly recommend you to start with set 1, which is how it's going to come out of the box. See where you see that maybe it's too slow, or maybe you want it to switch faster, and then go into this menu and make some changes, because when you make these changes, they're going to stay. for that particular set. It's not uncommon for me when I'm using the focusing system on our cameras to have, you know, a change between set 1 to set 4 to set 3 back to set 1, just depending on what it is that I'm shooting. From my conversations with friends of mine that shoot with other brands, they kind of do the same thing. It depends on the, you know, kind of general area that you're going to be photographing in. I don't think one set is from pretty much any brand is going to be a kind of end all be all for it. I think all focus systems have a need to be tuned a little bit more towards your particular style of capture. Brands will always do what we can to kind of give a relatively solid out of the box experience. But when we start going into kind of those more fringe use cases, so fast action sports, wildlife, even portraiture, depending on how you photograph, like we were just at WPPI, and if you're a photographer that doesn't really work on sticks, you pick the camera up and you're, you know, kind of always moving around, changing angles, finding different perspectives, you may notice that you want the system to be much more reactive, because while your subject is stable, you're moving the camera a lot, which means the focus needs to be faster. And you have the control to change that within this camera. So that's kind of what I'd say in general with the focusing system across the board, top down. I think it's a perfectly capable system to do, you know, to bring out on safari, to do some wildlife, to do sports. I mean, I shoot motorcycles with it, and I've never had a problem with it. And that's something I want to touch on in a little bit too, because I know there's some questions about things like buffer and burst speeds versus mechanical and electronic and stuff like that, but I want to talk about that in one chunk separately. DJ, hey Sean, any comment on the image quality results from DP Review and Photo to Photons? Dynamic range results often seem off. There has to be a missing component here, right? Well, yes, there is. I try to be relatively diplomatic in this. So for one, if you look at Manny Ortiz, his initial video about the S1R II and then his follow-up that he did, I think it was like about a little over a week ago, he highlights a very kind of interesting issue when it comes to raw processing for the files within these cameras. And this is going to be a broader statement about raw processing on modern cameras. So, Photo to Photons. Cool info. I follow all the commentary and the threads and all the information that gets posted over on DP Review's forum and all that kind of stuff. And the biggest thing I can say is I love how people are quick to throw results out. One, using a very early non-release version firmware on the camera and then drawing full conclusions from that. That's one thing. So critical thinking would say that information is not valid. And if data is being built off of stuff like that, that area of kind of result would also be invalidated. When it comes to the raw processor that you're using for this, I see a lot of people go online and, you know, they want to use like raw therapy or these other open source raw formats there. That stuff's great. Cool. You've got it. It kind of doesn't understand what the camera is. It doesn't have the ability to account for, you know, various things like all modern cameras across the board are designed with lens corrections in mind. I don't care what camera brand it is. There are very, very few lenses left on the market, modern lenses, that are 100% optically built to be corrected. I know some are out there claiming that some brands are doing that, but if you actually dig into it, they're not. It just means that they're built closer to that, which is a great thing. But when it comes into the image quality side of it, every brand out there, aside from, I think, Leica and there might be a couple other ones, all use a quote-unquote proprietary raw file. These raw files are designed so that every brand, and this is true for every brand, can build the best image that they can from the raw data coming from the sensor to produce a raw file. Even DNG files are, can have baked in information into it across the board, which can skew results. The only way, in my view, that you can judge things like image quality is if it is a standard, laboratory tested, and controlled environment. Anytime you open the door to having crowdsourced data, you have to acknowledge that you open up for a relatively large area of error to be applied into the data. So all of that being said, there aren't really that many places that are actually doing these kinds of ultra-controlled lab tests. DxO did them for a long time. I haven't really seen many cameras get added into DxO in a long time that are of like the modern era of sensors. And when you look at on the video, this is opposite of, say, the video side. On the other side of it, on the video side, you've got platforms like S1RII that do very controlled, industry standardized tests to show things like dynamic range. They have a very set, controlled environment for how they rate over and under exposure and how much latitude you can pull from it. Those are the areas that are actually going to provide you, if that's what you're looking for, as close to scientific data as you can get for determining quote-unquote image quality. Now, with the information that I've been following for the DP Review forums, DP Review Zone tests about it, Photons posts about it, the commentary on DP Review, I would argue that if you look at what people who have been using the camera and showing, actually taking these images, putting them into a program, and things like lifting shadows all the way up, or looking at an image and comparing it to something else, not just getting laser focused on the data, on what some obscure number is supposed to relate to a quote-unquote image quality, you'll see that the S1R Mark II is performing better than our previous cameras in various different areas. And in a lot of cases, I think Cam Mackey points this out when we look a little bit more on the video side of it, that it's actually producing much better color fidelity and detailed information about color in those shadows. A lot of times that can come down to things like the editor you use, the raw processor you use. As it sits, Adobe does state that they have raw support for the S1R Mark II, but I can 100% tell you there is something wrong with their raw processing. You look at history of, complaints across camera brands about raw processing, and you'll see everybody has the same kind of challenges. Early on, raw support tends to be a bit rough with the ACR conversions, and then over time that they quietly update the program, all of a sudden the RAWs get better and better performing. Capture One is the company that we worked with during launch to make sure that they had all the information they needed to debayer the files properly, get them in, do their conversion, and provide the best image quality to the end user. So anyone that's going to work with it, I highly encourage you to go take a look at Capture One for processing the raw files. Enough to the point that as much of an Adobe user as I have been, I have basically completely ditched Adobe for raw processing. It's only on Capture One now, and that's going back through all of my cameras. You still have things like, noise sliders. You still have things that, you can adjust as far as noise reduction in general. I'm a person that tends to just pull all noise reduction off of everything, or as much as I can, because for one, I grew up shooting in film, so noise doesn't bother me. You just use it as part of a character. But I've shot compared to my S1R, I've shot to the S5 II and the 2X compared to the S1R Mark II, and I can tell you, hands down, the S1R II is the best image quality out of it. So yeah, DJ, it's my rant there, my call out on a lot of things. Please don't take that as I'm calling out, Bill or anyone over at Photo to Photons. I think what they do is awesome. I think everything that the DP Review team does is awesome. I have a lot of people that I know and I talk to closely over in Adobe and now over in Capture One, and a lot of times these little kind of things that come up around a product launch are never never things that are meant to be in any way malicious or designed to sway anybody one way or another. Usually it comes down to evolving processes. That's why in general, when it comes to judging image quality, and when I look at image quality comparisons on our competitors' cameras, I don't look at crowdsourced information as far as like that are trying to present it as analytical data. I will go to places like S1RII and I will look at what S1RII says about it because it's a controlled, repeatable environment. And it's done with a single group of people, sets of cameras in a controlled environment, not hoping that the person that submits the data did it right, not claiming that they do it wrong, but you have margin of error there that never seems to make it out there that like, hey, you have to understand that this data is crowdsourced and it may not be 100% accurate. And then on top of that, also remembering that in a lot of cases, it's very hard to come to a conclusion where you compare camera A to camera B using this data set, because even the people who run those websites in a lot of cases will tell you you can't really compare the two together because you account for differences in the way that companies process raw files, how they create raw files, what raw editor was used to convert them, how were they created, what was the shooting scenario that they were done in, what were the actual camera settings that were used for it. So I highly encourage you, if you are looking at wanting to, make a judgment about image quality yourself, if you have the ability to rent or get one out on loan, do that. Go to, any site or person that's willing to put out raw files for you to be able to take a look at. See if it works into your workflow as far as image quality goes. I never take a single person's perspective as law online. And there's a lot of people that want you to believe that their perspective is law. That because it doesn't work for them, it's terrible. Or because it does work for them, that it's the greatest thing in the world. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that one, which was a lot. So it'll probably get picked up somewhere and yeah, all that. Let's see. McCary, in Canada, Ontario, they send it to Professional Electronics, considered the official repair. Is that where the cameras go? No. Professional Electronics is I think the location in Florida. I can check with them, McCary, to see what's kind of going on. Yeah. MCFPV, just checking if there's a way for the hot symbol on the S1R2 to show how long remaining, and in some tests I've done, stays on the screen past 30 minutes. I've brought that up to the engineering team. I saw that comment over on Facebook. I got tagged in it. And I have brought it up to the team to kind of see like, hey, is there a way to be more specific about what the thermal, kind of load is? My understanding is because it's so variable as far as ambient temperature, whether or not you've got, direct, IR light or sunlight right on the camera, that can be some of the challenges as to why it doesn't give you a countdown. To my knowledge, I don't think any camera brand, gives you a countdown or some kind of like potential remaining time, because that would be a hard limit on recording. You'd have to set some sort of limit there that wouldn't really be related to thermal, because thermals can change so quickly. So let's see here. Just got mine yesterday. Happy to replace one of my S5IIXs. Operational performance is a nice improvement of the S5 II. Like reviewing images and applying ratings. This annoyed me on the S5 II. Awesome. Yeah, really excited to actually start seeing a bunch of people get the cameras out there. I've already seen some really cool stuff produced by people. For the LUMIX Flow app, I feel like one of the best uses would be to tag good clips, something for a highlight video or quick turnaround, and make a file to get those clips in a sequence. Yeah. I mean, it in one view it could be Rhett. I think the biggest thing to remember is, so the Flow app is designed as a workflow tool. So it's designed as if you are scripting, shooting, doing everything for the purpose of, I'm going to be bringing this back into the computer and doing my edits. That's what Flow was initially designed as. Does that mean that it's not gonna change over time? Yeah, I would never say no to stuff like that. As our goals for what we want to do with the app, where we want it to go, kind of come to fruition, that's where eventually, you might see some things getting changed or added or updated or improved. But yeah, it's basically, I mean, you can do that because it has the whole idea of being able to tag, good, keep, or like maybe, basically. But for the idea that when you bring it into the computer, it's done so that you're able to then load the XML file in and have everything there to make something like a quick reel or a turnaround, things like that. I think it's surprising how much more efficient it is when you have that XML file. Now, I'm a Premiere editor, so it does work for me. My understanding is Final Cut, it might not work because of how they handle XML files. But it does a really solid setup, in my opinion. I've been able to do a lot of videos recently where I can use the Flow app, get all of my tagging for the takes when I'm recording like training videos, just drag that XML in, and now everything's kind of organized the way I want it. I don't have to remember which clip was the good one, which was the bad take. It does just make my stuff, my life a lot easier for it. Let's see here. Nick says, I would love to see Lumix take over Panasonic's camcorder cameras. I think you guys could really improve on what they have with the HCX2, like stabilization, all new codecs, etc. It is the same group. The camcorders and all that kind of stuff, like a lot of that stuff comes from the same engineering team. So I think we have, let me double check here. So we do have updated camcorders that we did actually just come out with. There is the, which one is this? This is the X2100 that actually I am bringing myself up to speed on because we're going to be at NAB and we're going to be showing these. So I'm breaking into my an area I never really got into, working with camcorders. But yeah, we do have them, and I'm starting to actually work a lot closer in trying to be able to educate based on those camcorders too. Great, you brought multiple exposure back to the S1RII, but it's not possible to map it to a quick menu or button, only the user manual, possibly an oversight. It's possible that just might not have been something that was thought of to put to a function button. But cool thing is, those are things that we can bring up to the engineers to be like, hey, is it possible to just add it so that you can toggle it like we do for live composite or for high-res shot? I'll definitely bring that up, Andy. Yeah, that's a good point. Wild Ride, does EIS cropless work with Sigma lenses? Does the S1R2 in-camera multi-exposure and live view composite? So cropless IS for now only works with the Lumix lenses. It is not a statement on the Element Alliance or anything along those lines. It's kind of like I said before, anytime a company introduces brand new technology and stuff like that, even in these kind of alliance situations, there's a lot of work that has to go into, one, whether lenses can do it or not. That can come down to the lens doesn't cover a large enough area to make it work, versus like our lenses, because we design them, we build them, we know what the tolerances are that we can go to, outside of the standard image recording area. So yeah, at this particular time, it's with the Lumix lenses. I do not know if the Sigma lenses are going to be capable of doing it. Those are conversations that happen between like engineers and kind of understanding like what could be done. It's kind of the same thing like, I don't know, did I put it away already? I think I might have put it away already. Give me 2 seconds here. I might not have put it away. Sorry. Kind of like when we look at some various different lenses across the board, some lenses have more functionality with cameras than others, and in some cases it can truly just come down to, well, when was that lens or product released, that can determine whether or not it's capable of the most up-to-date, functionality that you have. In some cases, you will see, because I've mentioned before about things like dual IS and that kind of stuff. In some cases, it comes down to when was the lens or whatever designed. If it was designed prior to, or originally designed, say, prior to being introduced as an L-mount lens, it may not have the functionality to support everything that you need in the new mount. So those are some things to kind of keep in mind, like when it comes to stuff like the cropless EIS, or kind of anything that would be a brand feature kind of thing. The follow-up side of your question, does the S1R2 have in-camera multi-exposure and live view composite? Yes, it does. It has both of those features, and they are really fun to work with. Joe says, I used the S1R2 over the weekend and Capture One was perfect. Lightroom was full of artifacts and weird shadow issues. Exactly. Adobe even calls out that their RAW support is preliminary, and they do state at the bottom of the Adobe Camera Raw site that preliminary doesn't really kind of guarantee that this is going to be the best experience working with the files. So, let's see here. How do I get a job at Lumix? Just keep an eye open if we are hiring. I don't know if we're hiring. I don't think we're hiring right now, but yeah. Is it true the shutter speed is limited to 1/8000th when using electronic shutter? I don't know. I've never had to shoot over 0.008 of a second, so let me check. Let's go to... Yeah, 0.008 of a second. So yeah, it's an 0.008 of a second for electronic. Electronic first curtain is 2000. Electronic with noise reduction is 8000. And then obviously mechanical is 8000 as well. Yeah, so up to 0.008 of a second. I can honestly tell you, I've never used shutter speed faster than actually, I've even rarely gone to 0.008 of a second. It's usually like 2500th of a second is probably the fastest I've ever shot. If I'm doing studio work, it's, if I'm doing studio work, it's going to be in... Why is this freaking out? Okay. If I'm doing studio work, it's going to be, my flash sync 250th, or I'm going slower. But yeah, that's what the electronic shutter max is at. Thanks for the stream. I usually enjoy watching them, but just so tilted right now by Panasonic Canada regarding their incompetency. Lost all interest in the S1R2 since warranty means nothing. I will follow up, McCary, on that and kind of see what's going on. If you want to shoot me an email to the lumixlive@us.panasonic.com, I'll take a look and see what's kind of going on there. Who should I write regarding the update of the Leica DG 12mm lens? The last update from 2022, and AF pumps on the GH7 even on my settings. You leave a comment on the video afterwards. I would have to double check. I don't think I see the same problems on the 12mm that I have, but I can take a look into it and see. Is the S1R Mark II manual available yet? If so, can you provide a link to the English version here? Yeah, last I understood, I think the manual is available. Honestly, a relatively quick Google search should be able to bring that up for you. Yeah. You're going to end up looking up S1RM2, not S1RII. That would help you find the manual. Those are the French manuals. I would have to take a look and see. I know it's up on the global site. I just would have to kind of find where it would be. Can firmware enable disable charging through USB PD? When in dark environment, I want USB plugged into the camera and don't want to use external power till internal battery is about to die while recording. So there isn't a, like, you wouldn't have an ability to, like, kind of, like, time set when the USB power delivery would kick on FC. So the only option you have in the menu is to just turn USB power delivery off. So yeah. But I can check and see in that. I would highly doubt something like that would get added into the camera. Yeah. Sorry. Jeremy, will there be tethering support for older S series cameras in Capture One or even Lightroom? Currently tethering the S1 using LUMIX tether, then the auto import feature on Lightroom. My understanding is I think the older cameras might not have the same communication protocols needed for being able to tether in with Lightroom or Capture One. So I highly doubt you're going to see S1, S1R, or S1H get, or even the S5 get support for tethering on these programs. It's one of the reasons why we maintain LUMIX tether for the various programs. That's kind of what I just understand as of now. Just wondering if you can be more specific about the problems you've been having about the raw conversion of the S1R2 files in Lightroom. Yeah. So who was it that commented on this? Joe, a little bit prior to you, had commented about Lightroom is full of artifacts and shadow issues. Those are the same problems that I ran into with Lightroom. Whether it's mobile or desktop or Lightroom Classic, or even just in Photoshop. Adobe Camera Raw, it is preliminary RAW support. It is not final RAW support. So I can give some leeway to understand that you may potentially have not the greatest experience with RAW. There's my particular perspective, which would be like, hey, if it's not good RAW support, then don't release it. That would just be better for the community, for photographers, because then those that don't know about Capture One or don't work in Capture One aren't penalized because the RAW software isn't doing what it's supposed to do. Versus, you know, kind of stating like, hey, it's coming, and giving maybe a little bit clearer idea of when to expect full RAW support. But yeah, as far as Lightroom goes, you get a lot of weird, you know, if you pull the shadows up, you get a lot of weird, like kind of shadow artifacts. And I found their sharpening and the noise reduction stuff was very weird in Lightroom, in Adobe Camera Raw, that I don't see in Capture One. And we were just using Capture One during WPPI for the entire tethered shoot for portraits and all that kind of stuff. And everything's been perfectly fine. Yeah, that's really where a lot of those problems are. So, how can I get a free one? Never hurts to ask. You're right, it doesn't hurt to ask, but no, you can't have a free one. Can you use dual native ISO for photography? Also, how can I find the dual native ISO differences for picture profiles in video? This is a very good question. So we're gonna go back to the camera here. So if you want to find out what your dual native ISOs are in various different modes, so let's go to, let's set the camera into standard here. Typically I shoot my cameras in vivid. So easiest way to tell what your ISO values are for high and low would be to go into the color profile that you want. And if you're in photography, you'll see dual native ISO settings, auto. If you change this to low and then click the ISO button, you'll see the lowest number you can, the lowest number you can go is your low native ISO. So in this case, for stills, which would be standard, vivid, landscape, flat, the monochrome profiles, portrait, things like that, this is going to be applicable to them. So your low range is 80. And then if I come in and I change the dual native ISO setting to high, and I do the same thing, I go to the ISO, you see that then that's 400. So that's your native ISOs for standard profiles. If I come in and I change this to, let's go to Cine-D, or SmallRig A2, the new color profile. So if I'm in SmallRig A2 and I do the same thing here, I go set this to low, and then press the ISO button. You'll see that the low ISO is 160. And then if I come back in and I set this to high, my high base ISO, or native ISO, is 800. If I want to go in and say, let's change this to Vlog, which again, I do not recommend shooting stills in Vlog. It's kind of a pointless endeavor. Go to low. If I go in, you'll see that the low range is 200. The high range, if I click the right button, high range is going to be 1000. Now, this did come up actually about the Vlog. So in video, Vlog has the dynamic range expansion functionality that you can take advantage of. But DR expansion only works in video. The reason it doesn't work in photography is because it's not needed in photography. In photography, the camera is always functioning with the higher dynamic range capabilities. In video, because video is typically either 10-bit or 12-bit, or the variations of the bit depths for things like raw footage, that's where the DR boost system changes how you can get your extra roughly stop of highlight dynamic range. So in the photography mode, you're not going to see DR expansion as an option to choose from. But Lost, if you do that for the different profiles, or honestly, I think it is on the spec sheet that you can find. Like if you go to like Panasonic's official site, I think that's one of the spec list items is what the native ISOs are. But yeah, on the fly, that's a relatively easy way to check and see what your natives are. But yeah, the basics of that. Can you use dual native ISO for photography? You can if you want to stick to, either 80 or 400 ISO and you're in a standard profile. Truthfully, I just shoot whatever ISO I need in the camera and then I'm good to go. There are situations where, like if you're doing astro or night photography, where sticking to base ISO is actually not a good idea. You're probably going to be in that 800 to 6400 ISO range, and some people may argue 6400 is probably too high, because you want more sensitivity for pulling the stars out of the sky. The lower gain levels at native ISOs, they're just not sensitive enough, or you have to use such fast lenses that now you're also questioning about if you're trying to compose with things like various different depths of field. So yeah, keep all those in mind. Was through dealer first, then handed off to Panasonic in Mississauga. Look up their reviews, you'll see. Yeah, I'll follow up, Macari. Law School also said for the S5 II, it's going to be the same process for the S5 II. Top down question, is there a time frame for Lightroom support for the S1RII RAW files? That's going to be fully up to Adobe. If anything, I would hound on Adobe about that. Not trying to say go, kind of break down their door, but it's their program, their RAW support, and knowing that Capture One has RAW support that, in my view, is pretty flawless. It's kind of on them to get it out fast and get it corrected, because I can tell you I was surprised when all of a sudden I saw, hey, Adobe apparently has support for the camera. Usually that doesn't happen. And knowing that this is the first time I've seen them release a camera like ours that has preliminary support makes me question if they actively jumped the gun just because Capture One has support. It's an interesting situation, but I don't think I cannot in good faith recommend Adobe Camera Raw for anybody using the S1R2, knowing that it is introducing problems to the RAW files. And if you're buying these cameras and you're making a living off the images that come out of it, you need the best support. And Capture One's just giving the better support on that right now. And I say that knowing that I have a lot of friends over at Adobe, and I probably just pissed a lot of them off. I wanted to mention something really positive about the S5 II manual that I hope is also evident in the S1R2 manual, and is that the index at the back, which aligns with the menu structure. That's a good question. It's been a long time since I've looked at all the menus. I'd have to double check and see. FC, can false color assist in white balance issues while recording video? Not really, because false color's there to give you exposure values, not your white balance stuff on there. White balance can alter your exposure, but false color is just going to be to tell you how close or far from clipping points you are on your black and white points for it. Is Silky Pix still recommended in case you have to wait for other software to support the camera? Yeah, Silky Pix is still a fine program to use. You know, when and if you want to use Silky Pix, you want to go in, usually the camera's little quick menu or quick manual that you get in the box will have either a QR code or a link that you can go to get the specific version of Silky Pix for your camera. Don't just go out and buy or get the public general release one, because a lot of times these programs they have specific versions of it that are maybe feature limited or whatever, just so you have raw support. I've used Silky Pix for a very long time. I've never really kind of meshed with it, never really had a good experience with it. The files it can produce are great. You have a lot of control over various different, noise reduction controls and exposure controls, but the way they control adjusting each of these aspects is just kind of out there for me. But Ulrich, I would highly recommend, if you're waiting, honestly, take a look at Capture One, the S1R2, and honestly, if you own a Lumix camera, you can go to the link that's on the US page for Capture One. It's also in the last video that we did for the apps. And you can get a trial of Capture One. You just have to punch in your camera's serial number. And it doesn't have to be the S1R Mark II. You can go back and use, S5 Mark II, and you can punch in and get a trial of it that way. And I think that's a 3-month trial. So gives you a decent amount of time to be able to work with it. And yeah, works out pretty good. Can we make use of waveform, false color, histogram, zebra when doing in-camera raw processing? So if you're doing in-camera raw processing where you're actually going into the file using the camera's menu to process the raw file, no, those tools they're not up on screen while you're doing it. So you'd have to really kind of use the in-camera raw processing as more of an edit to eye. As I would kind of put it. Yeah, that's kind of how those would work. In-camera raw processing is a pretty basic way of doing it. It's really more to be able to just get you the thing to go out and be able to have a JPEG from it, and then you'd be good to go. The short list. I'm about to order S1R2, but I'd like to know if it will be compatible with my Blackmagic 7-inch Video Assist 12 monitor. The short list. If it is the 12G monitor, yeah, it's going to be compatible. You're not going to have a problem with it. Raw over HDMI support is coming at a later date over firmware. The monitors will have to get their updates. The camera will get an update, and then you have to make sure you're using the right cables for it, or the right HDMI cable for it. And that just comes down more to making sure that it has the right bandwidth for it. But yeah, I mean, I've got a 5-inch Video Assist 12G back there that I've used. I shoot ProRes on it primarily because I like that monitor a little bit more size-wise, because I can go to SD cards than the Ninja Ultra that I have. But I do use them interchangeably. There's times where I want to use the Ninja. There's times where I want to use the Blackmagic. Yeah, but yeah, they'll both work. I received my copy of the S1R Mark II from the courier yesterday. It's so much smaller and lighter than the S1. Yeah, people definitely were very opinionated on the size and weight of the original S1 cameras. Overwhelmingly so. So yes, it is. It's a little. It's slightly bigger than the S5 II chassis. It's a little bit deeper, and I personally like the grip. To me, does feel a heck of a lot nicer. But I also run it with a grip on my camera. Even the original S1R that I have, which I don't even know if it's out anymore. I think it's packed away in one of my trunks. My original S1R, I always had a grip on it as well too, because I want that, you know, kind of chunky full body feel to a camera. Okay. So we got a little bit more time here. So there were some other questions that had come in a little bit ago that I want to address a bit here. And one of those is about, this was from DB from our stream 2 weeks ago. It says, what are the frame rates available in 5.9K ProRes RAW, 48 or 60 available? Or limited to 24 and 30, and is there a 5.9K all intra 422 48 frame per second in the camera? So if we take a look at my S1R2, we can see here you got a couple different options. So if we want to look at, say, ProRes, and hopefully again I don't break my switcher, yay, it doesn't. And help if I put a CF Express card in here so that it doesn't always give me that warning. Okay, so if we come in here and we take a look at what's available, so 5.8K would be the highest that you have within the camera. So you've got 5.8K ProRes RAW, and you can do up to 30p within this camera. So that's going to be 4.2 gigabit. If you want to do standard ProRes, that's where you have HQ and just 422, and those will also be up to 30p. If you want 60p, you're going to end up having to go to the 4K, so like C4K option. So you can go C4K, 422HQ, that'll be 60p. And in ProRes, it's going to be 2430 or 60p. If you need things like 48 frame per second, we're going to go back to the MOV recording. And we're going to come into rec quality, and I can hit display filtering, and I'm filtering out for the 5.9K. I could filter out for 5.8K, which would be a 17:9 ratio, but they're going to be the same capabilities. You'll see that I have a 420 10-bit for 60p. I have 420 10-bit for the 48 frame, and 420 10-bit for the 30p and 24p. If I am looking and I need, say, 422 10-bit, I can come into the codec option. I can do 422 10-bit all intra, hit OK, and you'll see the highest that I can go is C4K 60p in 422 10-bit all intra. But I do also have a C4K 48p in 422 10-bit as well. And then I have the UHD options for those as well. So for DB, if you need an all-intra 48 frames per second, you can do that up to C4K, and you can get your 48 frames per second. These will be 800 megabit per second all-intra files. If you're used to working in ProRes, it would be roughly equivalent to ProRes LT. One, it's kind of the reason why we don't do ProRes LT in the camera, because our all-intra codec is damn near identical to it. But that's the options that you have there. One thing I would say about chroma subsampling, though, is take a look at Connor McCaskill's video that he posted recently, where he compared the S1R2 against, I think it was one of his Sony cameras, and actually showed about how our 420 10-bit seems to be actually holding better color than other 422 10-bit options out there. So In very certain cases, sure, 422 10-bit and an all-intra codec, I can kind of understand why in some cases you need it. Like if you're doing green screen or keying, or if you're doing really high-end VFX stuff. But I'm willing to bet for the vast majority of people, 420 10-bit is probably more than enough for the grading that the vast majority of people are using. And if you're grading enough to break 420 10-bit, in an HEVC compression, you're probably on the borderline of breaking 422 10-bit as well. Question. Outside the box question, will there ever be a way to digitally browse the camera menu system? Would be great to see what settings are compatible with different resolutions or frame rates. I think you'd have to... I think you'd end up having to wait quite a while for camera processors to be able to do that. Processors that are used in cameras are very specific. They are designed for image processing, video processing, the storage of those images, and a basic menu operation system. They're not like SoCs that you see in phones, in some computers, that kind of thing, where they are like massively powerful and they can, you know, do all that kind of stuff. These are purpose-built processors, so unless it was designed from day one to do that, I highly doubt you're going to kind of run into that kind of advancement within traditional cameras, at least for now. So, hi, Sean. As is a camera made with stills in mind, are there any improvements for fast action autofocus accuracy, sports, wildlife, and such? Yeah. So we kind of talked about this a wee bit before, but if I'm in the photography mode, one of the kind of big things that we talked about early on this, let me get this back to my settings, is out of the box, and this is going to be similar for all of the other cameras as well. Out of the box settings are going to be done in set 1. It is highly recommended if you're going to be doing wildlife and sports, take a look at these other settings, or the other kind of presets here for the type of action that you're going to do. For things like wildlife and sports, most likely going to be something like set 3 or set 4. Because those are designed for faster moving subjects, you know, more situations where it's going to be unpredictable with how they change direction. And in wildlife and sports, that's probably more likely what's going to happen in the scenario. And the default settings out of the box, I would honestly state, are probably a little too slow for those things. So going in and changing it to set 3 or 4 is probably going to be a huge change to your keeper rate and the feeling of responsiveness that you get with the focusing system. Sorry if you can hear the dog. This is why video quality is restricted to 4K video recording in photo modes on the S1RII. Because you flip the switch and go to video mode, and now you've got your video options. In all seriousness, it kind of is that. It's that if you're going to be doing, you know, higher end video recording, just flip the little switch on there to video, and now all of your video options are set, ready to go. The dog is excited for NAV too. Yeah, someone's at the door, so he's freaking out. So I apologize, everybody. But yeah, in hey Kevin, calm down, bud. In all seriousness, yeah, in the photo mode, you have to remember that clicking the record button for video while you're in photo would be much more of a, I just need a real quick video clip, not that I'm going to need the highest possible quality, the biggest performance, that kind of thing. That's where you'd have to flip the switch, and that's why it's built this way. We got a lot of commentary about... Hang on one second. Let me make sure that he's okay. Okay, everybody. Sorry about that. This is Kevin. I don't know if anyone's actually met Kevin. He's a little camera shy. But yeah, when someone comes to the door, he really lets me know. Where was I? Yeah, the kind of just knowing that, like, yeah, with the way this camera was designed, the way photographers have always said that they want the ability to have all of their video functionality not be in the menu. Videographers tend to have the same logic. You know, you want the photo functionality not really there because I'm trying to focus on video. Making it to where it's a switch now, honestly, if you run into a situation where it's like, you know, I need anything over 4K, when you set the camera up to do that, if you're going to need, say, like 5.9K for video recording, set the video recording side up as 5.9K and everything, and then when you want to record that video, it's just flipping that switch, and our camera switches the modes very quickly. So it would effectively be the similar as just pressing the button. It's one extra little, you know, flip of a switch, but it helps you keep everything pretty well organized. Like, if you want different color profiles, if you want different autofocus systems, like setups and stuff like that between your photo and video use cases, it can be a big help in that particular setup. Dog's excited for NAB2. Yes. Yep, that was Kevin. He is a 10.5-month-old red healer. And he's definitely 10.5 months. He's excited like a little puppy. Just purchased S1RII, and I'm so excited. Thanks for listening to the community. Quick feature request, hoping for in the future in-camera focus stacking. Kudos to the Lumix team. Yeah, we've been pressing very hard on a couple of things that we want to see. In-camera focus stacking would be one of them. That would be a really nice thing. I think that if we were able to get deployed would be cool. As long as it's useful. In-camera focus stacking is one of those things that it can be really good, but it can also be kind of a like, all right, cool, it does it, but the result is still going to be better if I do it on my computer. So I'm not saying that we're not doing it. I'm not saying that we are doing it, but we are looking into it. The other is, I know I've pressed hard. I know a number of you have pressed hard about upgrading what we can do as far as the spacing between for bracketing, that stuff that we've always brought up. So yeah, a lot of the commentary, and that's one of the great things with these live streams, is the feedback that y'all are giving and the recommendations that you want to see and how you want to see these cameras grow. Our engineers read this, they see it, it gets shared in with the team, and it helps them understand what they want to do for the next series, or if it's something that could be in a firmware update for the next round kind of stuff. So yeah. Capture One tether will be added to S5 on future firmware, question mark. No info on whether or not it can or can't be added there. How does the video image quality compare with the S1H? I would argue and say it's way better. But I don't shoot things or film things where I run into potential things like moire. I think I think Dan Hopkins does a really good coverage of, you know, S1H to S5 2X to the S1R2, and shows about moire. And I think go back and look at the actual like results from even the S1H. No camera is free of things like moire, but I would argue in general I've always just had a lot of really good experience with our cameras. I think I love the image quality out of our cameras. I think if you want the most accurate, or you want the best tonality, the S1R2 is going to be better than the S1H. But for those that need certain things, like you need time code in, or you really know that you know, for what you capture, you really need that low pass filter, the H will still be the better camera for some. That's kind of the nice thing that we are, like where we are within all of these cameras across the board, is that even cameras from, you know, 6 years ago are still producing amazing images for various different use cases. Over time, those use cases start to shrink a little bit more to where they become more niche in what they really excel at, or where you would want to, you know, kind of use that camera. But as technology moves forward and better cameras come out, I mean, you see just some really solid performance coming out of it. I highly recommend taking a look at like Cam Mackey. Kofi just posted out a video from Maui with the S1R II with some little voiceover. And look at the image quality that you get out of it. I think there's a difference between if you watch some videos for what the verbal content is versus those that are filming with the camera for their content and just looking to see what the image quality looks like. You'll see, in my opinion, I think it massively stands out. Yeah. Thank you for answering. I have clients who do not want top-notch results. They want fast. So in that use case, in-camera would be awesome. Yeah, exactly, Jamie. And that's where a lot of times things like in-camera focus stacking and stuff like that have to be considered. There are image quality benchmarks that obviously you want, like, right? Like there is speed, like I forget what the phrase is, but it's like you can pick 2 of 3, on this kind of like triangle for what you deliver. And you can either have speed, quality, or cost or something like that. And it's like only pick 2. And in a lot of cases, as long as you can get quality to a reasonable level with the speed being in a reasonable level, then you can kind of balance out within that area. The last thing we want to do is put out a feature or an option in the camera that, while yeah, it technically can do it, it ends up really kind of not helping that much. So yeah. I like this. Just listen to me. If you shoot hybrid, stop watching videos and get out the S1R II. It'll rock your socks off. Fund off 90% of users. I would tend to agree, and I'm a bit biased, but I would tend to agree. I don't understand why in 2025 none of the cameras have bottom direct Arca Swiss compatible. Just my 2 cents for the future. It's a good question. I would honestly say, I mean, like, manufacturing costs would probably go up relatively high for the cameras, because now you have to account for an Arca Swiss base plus the grip on the camera, and how do you design that and all that kind of stuff, and the height and all those things, and the machining and the tooling and all that stuff for it, where Arca plates you can pick up for like pennies on the dollar now, or cages that have it built in. That's honestly probably why it's not done. It's more just Arca Swiss, or I forget what Manfrotto's, like the more popular cinema-oriented plate design system is. If the camera stays neutral, it's fully up to your choice to figure which ones you want to end up, kind of working with. How you can add a battery grip? Yeah, I mean, it would be doable to add a battery grip if even if it was an Arca plate on there. The grips would just have to be designed in, with that in mind. Then you'd have weird body lines in the camera. I do know, I think there was one camera company recently, I think it was a medium format camera, that did have an Arca plate built into the grip side of it. And it was cool, but the people I know that use those cameras are probably usually putting cages or running their own plates on it anyway, or like L brackets and stuff. So it's more of that. It's a cool idea, but in practice it may not be as great as we think, because the times that it's not used are probably way more than the times that it is used, for all the effort to go in and build it into the design of the cameras. Is it possible to take photos while recording video? Not simultaneously. If you're recording something like 8K or 4K or whatever you want, on playback, you just push the menu button, and then you can save still out from it. As much as I like in-camera high-resolution processing, I wish there was an option to postpone that to a later moment so I can keep shooting. Any chance that could be implemented? It's an interesting idea. Definitely something we can mention over to the engineering team. I don't know if it would be possible to actually just kind of capture it and then do the compilation of those images later. But I can ask them. Yeah. let's see here. Why was the decision made to make the camera much smaller in size? I quite enjoyed the large original S1 body. They have a professional feel. This is a good question. And this is actually probably the last question I can take today. I didn't realize it's 20 after already. So yes, this is a very good question. Actually, I'll take this one, and then I'm going to take George's question as well. So the decision to make the camera smaller. Fact is, even while I liked the original S1 size chassis, so the S1, S1R, and the S1H, the fact is they were built the size they kind of had to be at the time. People wanted the top plate LCD. They wanted the highest performance stabilization that you could get. You wanted a really powerful, robust shutter design. You wanted, at that point, it was it originally launched with XQD media, but was firmware updated to support CF Express. And the weather resistance that was, kind of known within that time. So at the time, they were built to the size that they kind of had to be to fit all of that together. Stabilization units were gigantic. They still are a very large component within the cameras, and they're very heavy. So that's one point of it. The other point is things like weather resistance and the way that that's built in, almost 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago at this point. The manufacturing side of how do you build it to spec changes. So as time moves on, processes to do some of these things starts to get refined and smaller, so you can do smaller and smaller packages. The amount of space needed to dissipate the thermals from the 5.7 million dot viewfinder were big back in the day. Modern iterations of the 5.7 million dot viewfinder are way better to integrate into smaller cameras and dissipate out the thermal load that those viewfinders generate. So a lot of that stuff combined, along with the fact that an overwhelming majority of people and review channels and outlets all kind of pointed out that while the S1 series was very robust and built like a brick that you could use to literally hammer nails into, in with, it was too big. So we looked at it and we went to a more modernized, what people want as a size of their camera. And that's, kind of where it sat. We were able to miniaturize some tech where we needed to. We were able to advance things better than we were back in the time. Cooling solutions, rear screen designs, all that kind of stuff. So we were able to get everything much smaller. So at that point, it doesn't need to be any bigger, so it won't be bigger for its intended purpose. All right, and the last question I can take today is from George. It says, please give us shutter speeds that are longer than 60 seconds. Up to 4 or 8 minutes would be great. Really need this for tracked Astro. I would counter your comment here, or your question. To my knowledge, there is only one camera on the market, or one or two cameras on the market that can do longer than 60 seconds. And the vast majorities of the cameras in the market only do 30 seconds, as far as a push the shutter button and let it go. With the advancements now of you having Bluetooth control for shutter start and stop, it kind of makes whatever the in-camera's time limit for long side on the shutter speed a little less of kind of a barrier these days. I don't want to say that it's not. I can understand there are certain circumstances where maybe you don't want to use anything like that. But there is nothing stopping you from being able to use a Bluetooth remote or a wired remote and trigger it and time it that way. And to my knowledge, there are even some triggers that you can plug into the 2.5 mil trigger port that are timer triggers that you can punch in, that I want it for, 4 minutes, I want it for 6 minutes, I want it for 20 minutes, and it would handle that for you. That's more really kind of the reason why I think you don't see a lot of this stuff. The other thing is that for the timed release in camera, you do kind of run into you know, how much memory, how much storage, how much, you know, processing do you want for it to be able to do that with just the press of one button. Over time, things may evolve and change, but as of right now, that's kind of where it is. So with that, everybody, thank you all so much for tuning in today. These were awesome questions, great feedback. If we didn't get to the question or the comment, drop it in the comment section after the video is posted. I can review them there. As I mentioned, the next 3 weeks are going to be a little weird for the live streams because they're going to be, most likely, they're going to be recorded for, the next 3 weeks, like all through April. We will be at NAB next week. Next weekend. So if you are here, or if you are going to be in Las Vegas, stop by the Panasonic Connect booth. Matt Fraser and I will both be there for the show. So I encourage you all to swing by if you're in Las Vegas. Check it out. We will have the S1R Mark II on display there. We will also have, for those that are looking at the camcorders, we will also have the camcorders there. Just come by, chat with us. We'd love to connect with y'all. Outside of that, if you haven't already, I encourage you to go take a look at the LUMIX Creator Club over on Discord. That is a LUMIX official supported Discord channel where you can interact with other photographers, videographers. You can interact with us, myself, if you've got questions or, you know, kind of things that you want to take a look at. Check out other people's work that are using the LUMIX cameras. Get inspiration from them. I highly encourage you to go take a look at it. It's going to be discord.gg/LumixUSA. Link is down in the description below. Outside of that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Get out there. Go create a bunch of cool stuff. If you get your S1R Mark II, or you're on the fence about getting one, I'd say definitely go for it. But if you already do have one or you're getting one soon, let us know. Show us over on social platforms. Show us over in the Discord, your new camera and what you're capturing with it. We love seeing the images that people create with these cameras. Otherwise, have a great day. Have an awesome weekend. And I will see y'all pretty soon. Later.